This episode is sponsored by Oribi. Hey guys, I've got a quick question for you. How many of you are tired of using Google Analytics? I bet quite a few of you are raising your hands right now. Understanding where and why you lose site visitors before they convert is hard. With Google Analytics, you not only have to get your developers involved with coding events, but you also have to struggle through endless piles of data just to figure out what's causing your leads to drop out. Seriously, it's kind of a nightmare. Well, you'll be excited to hear that there's now a better way to analyze your website and get actionable insights. Meet Oribi. Oribi is a unique marketing analytics tool that captures all the events visitors perform on your website without using any code. Oribi enables you to analyze visitor behavior patterns, build smart funnels, and get tons of insights so you always know what your next step is. Finally, you'll be able to understand your visitors and know what to change in order to convert more. No more blind spots. To start your free trial, visit oribi.io/SaaSdistrict or use the coupon code SaaSdistrict and get a free 14-day trial today. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Akil Jabbar, and welcome back to another episode of SaaS District. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how better UI, UX design practices can benefit your SaaS. Today, we have our guest, Pek Pongpaet, joining us. Sorry if I butchered that, but Pek is an award-winning designer with over 16 years of industry experience. He's also a podcast host, entrepreneur, actor, and the CEO and principal UX strategist of Impekable. And if you guys don't know Impekable, they are a world-class agency that develops and produces SaaS and mobile solutions, promoting digital transformation and innovation through services like product strategy, UI UX, design, web and mobile application development. And they've worked with some of the biggest brands in the world like Adobe, Apple, Google, Nike, and many others. And fun fact, he's also a motion capture actor, where his well-known work is known over at Mortal Kombat, The Deadly Alliance, and Mortal Kombat Armageddon. So welcome, Pek. Super excited to have you on the SaaS District show today.
Thank you for having me here. People always enjoy the fact about Mortal Kombat. Sometimes that's the only thing they remember about me.
You are the Mortal Kombat. So I know we talked about this a little bit on your podcast when I was on it. I have my black belt in karate, if people don't know as well. So, we chat a bit about that, but love to hear on your side. How did you get involved on the motion capture side of Mortal Kombat? What was your role there? How did you get there? And how did you get to where you are today running your design agency?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for having me on your show, Akil. I've actually listened to your podcast for many years, and you put out a lot of good content. And, when you reached out, when we connected, I didn't even put two and two together that you're from the SaaS district, because I didn't think you started with that. But I've listened to your content for a long time, so it's very strange feeling to be finally on it. How I actually got into the Mortal Kombat video games? Well, I studied martial arts, had been studying for many years, and then in total over a decade, specializing in wushu, which is a Chinese martial art. And you can see a little bit of what wushu is about in movies like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, any of the Jet Li or Jackie Chan movies. Jet Li is actually a wushu practitioner. He's a 6-time national champion in China for wushu. So anyways, I growing up watching a lot of kung fu movies as a kid, I had always dreamed of I want to do that when I'm older. So when I had the opportunity to, when I found a good school and opportunity to, I studied and trained there for many years, and as well over the years found other schools and other coaches, which led me to opportunities in competing, in performing. So there was a one-of-a-kind martial arts theater show, which I was involved in Chicago. And then ultimately I heard about an opportunity for Mortal Kombat 5 at the time. They were just starting to do 3D and then motion capture, meaning the alternative to motion capture, which is just what Pixar does, is they hand animate everything, meaning they just use the computer to move the characters like a puppet. And motion capture involves the process of putting a suit on to a person that has dots, reflective dots that they can then capture very natural human movements and digitize them. So I wasn't involved in the coding or anything, but basically as a martial artist, doing the moves for the Mortal Kombat video games as a practitioner. So I auditioned, I got the role, and I ended up being involved in over 6 games over 10 years. And some of the characters I was in played, because people always ask, Sub-Zero, Raiden are my favorite, nice. Liu Kang and Kung Lao. There were others, but I think those are the ones that I remember doing the most on.
So cool. Yeah. I mean, if I look back as a kid, what I really wanted to be, I think I wanted to be like a wrestler at some point. Like I looked up to The Rock. I know that there was Van Damme in there. I did watch Mortal Kombat, but even now, like The Rock is an inspiration, right? Like what he does even on the business side. But the reality of like being a wrestler, like when I actually did it in high school, it was like, you're just like grappling with men and, hugging each other. It's like, this is not fun. I want to like, raise my eyebrow and do all this fun stuff, right? Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. Is that something you still enjoy, would do again if you had that opportunity?
Well, it's really tough. I stopped doing it many years ago. I had a sports injury, and which prevented me from doing it at the level that I wanted to do it. So I decided to take up another sport. But it was fun while it lasted. It gave me great opportunities. And then I think the discipline of martial arts, a lot of what I got out of the teachings, the philosophy of martial arts translated really well to business.
Yeah, you hear that a lot, right? So I think martial arts is one. A lot of people, enroll in the army, and just that self-discipline you get, I think, putting in the reps day in, day out, and then, repeating, and then seeing yourself become, leveling up slowly. I think you can apply that to all areas of life and including business. So how did you get to where you are running today, running your design agency from there?
Yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head that, being doing martial arts for a living is the toughly thing. And I've seen many martial arts artists struggle sometimes having their own studio. So I was, even though it was a very serious hobby of mine, I never took it as a career. I've always had a career in tech. I worked in consulting for many years, and which culminated into, I guess it's no surprise that I finally started my own consulting agency. I was at Accenture at one point, Accenture Labs, but various consulting firms. So consulting was what I knew a lot of through my career, and I eventually started my own. And to that end, martial arts, like you said, the just practice, the perseverance, the pursuit of excellence, and just the value of hard work are all things that helped create good habits for me when I started my company.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, getting into the nitty gritty of UX, UI design, super basic, simple terms for people who are just starting off, or maybe who are just not as familiar, who are SaaS founders, SaaS marketers. What is the difference between SaaS, UX and UI design? Yeah, absolutely.
So UX stands for user experience, and it can be broadly defined as the overall experience a user, a customer has with a product or service. So this can encompass everything from their emotional experience with the product. Also, the discipline of UX, the field of UX design is how elements, information is laid out, is arranged, the order of pages and things, that's UX. Mm-hmm. So if I were to use an analogy, UX design is similar to, for example, architecture, because UX design is about how things are laid out. So just as an architect lays out a house, right? Like it's very intentful that, a good architect you open the door to your house and you might have a foyer, right? That opens to the living room, then leads to the kitchen. And it just feels natural, right? It feels good and it works well, how it's laid out. Maybe an architect who wasn't trained, maybe you open the door and maybe like the coat closet is all the way in the back of the house because they didn't know where to put it. And then that was the only room that was left. So, that's kind of like the opposite of a good architect. Same thing. A good UX can make things feel very smooth and natural. For example, a great example of a good UX pattern is Instagram and how you create a post. So when you create a post, you take a picture, right? And just as you're about to post it, what you're asked to do is to write the description, tag it, apply some filters, and maybe tag the location and people. But what you don't know is in the background, the photo is already being uploaded to the server. And had they basically hit upload and then uploaded the photo as you're doing it, it would have felt really slow because you'll wait until the photo is uploaded. Here, by the time you hit upload, actually in the background the photo is already uploaded, so it feels instantaneous. So that was a very intentful use of kind of switching the order of things to make it seem like the service is instantaneous. But really, the moment that you took the photo, they've already started uploading it to the servers. So that's an example of, say, good UX. So as a design agency, we don't just think about the UX of the product and what the users think, but we're service providers, so we also think about the UX of our customers, right? What is the experience we as Impekable people want our customers to experience with us? Or if we're handing off designs, right, we want the UX of the experience of the engineers to feel like, oh wow, the design files are clean, it's well labeled, it's organized. So we think intently about that as well. UI, you asked the difference between UX and UI. UI stands for user interface. So then the user interface is typically the visual treatment of an application. So this can cover everything from the font, the colors, the typography, the icons, the imagery. So some of that kind of overlaps with branding, kind of like the brand design. So in that sense, UI is more like, if the UX is kind of how the architect chooses to lay out things, the UI could be like the choice of paint, the interior design, kind of the finishings, right? You can have this same exact home, right? Built exactly the same way, the exact same UX, if you will. Yeah. But you can have, the kitchen countertops can be different. The colors can be different, right? The furnishings can be slightly different. So like the choice of paint, the choice of wood, for example, kind of in my mind is the analogy of UI. A great example of this is Lyft and Uber are essentially the same app. I would say they have very similar UX, if not like almost the same. But the look, the feel of Lyft and Uber are very different. Like Lyft, it's pink, it's purple, it's got really big rounded corner buttons. The font is kind of like thick and the feeling is more like fun or friendly, right? Whereas Uber, it's black and white. The font is really thin and it's trying to go for a much more luxurious luxury feel, if that makes sense. But essentially they're the same UX, but one is trying to convey a more friendly demeanor and one is trying to go for more luxury. So in accordance to their brand. So that's roughly the difference between UX and UI. Hopefully that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. So, you're walking in there, you understand the flow of it, how everything is set up and put together. And then, it's just kind of filling it in to how you want, and you can personalize that on based on the design you like. So obviously when it comes to, SaaS founders, when they're thinking about this, the main place is going to be, okay, my website, my logo, my brand. And then obviously when I go into the app or my software, my platform, I have to think about all this right there, the flow of how I sign up, my onboarding, my, of using the actual, the platform itself. Can you mention, share some ideas? What else is that, why is that important when they're building that out, of thinking about the design?
Yeah. So UX, I would say having, with software being so good these days, right? Like a lot of SaaS, I would say, is nowadays, right? The way to scale is to make it self-serve, right? So to make it as easy as possible so that they don't need help being handheld, I think is a really good aim to have as a SaaS. Mm-hmm. So that's one benefit of UX. Really, UX is, I would say, design in terms of like when people talk about design as it pertains to software, I would say it's not as subjective as people think. It's not art. It's really there to solve a problem. So what are some of the benefits? Well, with good UX, you can remove friction, right? If people are not signing up, you can improve signups by making it easier to sign up, for example, through design. For example, like, if I can only sign up with email, and it's pretty common to add, maybe a better UX would be letting you sign up. Like if it's a mobile app, you can sign up with your phone number, or maybe adding Google sign up, or maybe it's a business app, you can add LinkedIn. And some of these are pretty one-click signups, right? Like Facebook is essentially a one-click sign up. So that can be categorized as a UX problem, like where we can improve signups there. You can also improve the abandonment, reduce the abandonment of a process or not completing a task. For example, I recently was talking to a trading application, right? And so much, like, people sign in, and it's the amount of people. In order to trade, you have to connect your bank account. Like, otherwise there's nothing to do. But there's the conversion rate from sign up to connecting a bank account is super low, for example. And the problem statement is like, how do you improve that, right? So that good UX can help convert that or increase that. A great real world example that is pretty famous is this. If you Google $300 million button, there's an article written by a famous designer, UX designer, Jared Spool. And it's a pretty substantial article, but I'll give you like the TLDR. Mm-hmm. And basically, his client was a big retailer, e-commerce. And by understanding kind of where people were leaving and abandoning, upon checkout, the solution was to add guest checkout, because people didn't want to create an account. By adding a guest checkout, they were able to add $300 million to the bottom line that year. So I think, if you want to quantify the value of UX, if you have big problems, and you can improve your metrics by, a percentage, it can come out to something. So, you would do that calculus all day long. In our own world experience, we helped a retailer ourselves, and we helped them redesign a mobile app. And I don't remember what the starting rating was, but it was pretty low. But we were able to move it up to a 4.2 out of 5 from their previous score by redesigning their app. And as you can surmise, the better the app rating, the more people are going to use it. More people feel better about it. So good UX can help with app retention. And finally, I think we mentioned it is, by making something easy to use, you're reducing support costs. So, if you have live chat, you have help desk, if you have support costs, by having something easy to use, self-serve, you're essentially reducing that. So if people can help themselves or figure it out intuitively. And then another maybe use of UX is you can steer people towards a desired behavior. And I was just on Amazon this morning trying to buy some supplements. And if you ever check out on Amazon certain products, like they're trying to steer you to subscribe, right? Like, start a subscription. Like no, I just wanted to buy it once. I don't, and it's actually the buying it one time is actually it's hidden, and it needs there's some, I would say, some cognitive load to figure out, okay, where did they hide this? How do I get to buy it one time? So UX can be used, the power of UX, you can use it to steer to a certain behavior as well.
Yeah, I mean, they had that as your default, right? You're like, I want to go buy. It's like, wait, I have to subscribe and I have to pay this every month. No. It's just like a couple of clicks to get back to just buying the one, right? Yeah,
exactly. They're adding friction to buying it one time. They're removing friction to just subscribe it. Yeah. I guess it makes sense for them. It probably works. And I think that's probably one of our biggest playbooks of, when we do acquisitions or investments in companies, conversion rate optimization. And that's part of the overall. You can have the same product in the back end, you have a good system and flow, but just by making, differences and adjustments to the design, to your copy, to your layout, to your, different,
UXs of how people are flowing to take action and convert. We see a lot better conversions, and obviously increases your LTV, decreases your churn. There's a lot of things that increase your overall enterprise value. And I think I mentioned I think it was the Rocket Brothers when they I think so what the Rocket Internet, right, where they replicate companies and go into different markets. And I think it was they made a replicate of eBay in one of the markets, and they had like a whole team of PhDs just studying how to perfect the buttons and get the maximum results out of it. But it worked, and ended up selling it for billions of dollars. So there's definitely value in optimizing those little details, right?
Absolutely. I think things start to blur in terms of definitions and the intersection, right? Like I think some of a conversion optimization could be categorized as improving the UX as well. Yeah.
What is design systems? I think you mentioned that. How do you use that to create more efficiencies for SaaS companies specifically who have multiple offerings, and you want to when they're trying to decide by so many things that they can go towards?
Sure. So design systems are nothing really but a set of guides, standards and components to manage design at scale. And the point of that is to reduce redundancy, to have a shared language, to create consistency across different pages and platforms. And the main benefit of that is that if you have, for example, a team of designers, right, and they're working in parallel, you don't want them recreating common components, right? Because otherwise, every page is going to be, whoever worked on it, there's going to be slightly different, right? Examples of great design systems include Apple's design system, Google. You may have heard of the Google Material Design System, IBM Carbon, Twitter Bootstrap is another one. I think it's used by maybe like 30% of the. There's some statistics around some of the amazing usage of Twitter Bootstrap, but basically what all these design systems and guidelines, and a lot of enterprises also have their own design systems, is that one, for the user, it reduces cognitive load. So like, if I download one Google app, right, I understand that, hey, this is the hamburger menu, for example, that's what they call it. There's the floating action button, the plus sign, right? Like, oh, this is to add whatever it is I'm in. So if I'm in a calendar, I add an event. If I'm in to-do list, that's to add a to-do item. For the user, like it's affordances that I'm used to, right? Like it's just like cars follow a certain patterns, right? Like in the US, I can know that, hey, I get into any car and the front left seat is the driver's, right? And the steering wheel is right in front of me and stuff. It's like, these are common patterns, right? So that's what a system affords you. For the designer, it's the difference between assembling versus creating from scratch, right? Like if I have to imagine if you build a house and every component or thing I have to build from scratch versus just like, oh, I have a standard door, I have standard windows. I just, in this home, I need, 10 doors. These are the 10 doors that, I use the same door. So it's consistent. The door frame is consistent. The level of the door handle is consistent, right? Then I just have to worry about assembling the house versus building its components. So one, I can move faster. I can focus my attention and time on more complex problems and actual problem solving versus just moving the pixels. Mm-hmm. And recreating the design elements over and over. For teams, it's about creating a unified language to reduce miscommunications, right? So, for example, if we're all, if we agree to use the Google Material Design System for a SaaS, which is actually a good common practice, when I say, oh, you should use chips for this, because if we're familiar with the Google Material Design System, we know what chips means, or, oh, we should use a date picker for this or a modal for this. So it's a common language, and it helps improve communication that way.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Yeah. No. So if you have more to add to that, I just wanted to ask, if I'm looking for bringing on somebody to my team, or just hiring some, an agency or external, Is there any things that you look for finding that best person? Like, do you ask them these specific technical features or experiences, or, maybe from your side, how do you hire them who you can look at their portfolio and say, hey, they have stunning design, but maybe they don't have that, like the empathetic, customer experience, which is, part of the UX, you'd say?
Yeah. Having good hard skills of being able to design produce a good design, I think is table stakes, and you can judge that via portfolio pretty easily. Mm-hmm. I think really is understanding what, their process, their design process, asking questions like, okay, what problem did you solve here? What was the problem that this design was going to solve? How did you arrive at this solution? What were the results that they achieved, right? Like, design is not just about pretty pixels, right? If I added something, did that improve or reduce kind of the goal I was trying to achieve, right? Like by adding that guest checkout, Jared Spool was able to add a lot of enterprise value to that e-commerce. So really, it's what are you trying to solve with this design, and did that design achieve its goal? So design is, in this context again, is not kind of art where yeah, some of the visuals is very subjective. This looks pretty. This is not. But I think really understanding what stuff they were trying to solve and how they went about it, and also what. Maybe looking at their design files and, kind of like their UX with you, right? What is their what are their communication skills, especially in this remote world? I think communication is much more important than just, being able to produce great design. So I would say communication skills, their output, meaning, I actually helped some startups recruit a designer, and they showed me, the work of this one designer. And they didn't even bother to change the layer names. So like everything was disorganized. Everything was like layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So if I had to look for something, it'd be impossible, right? So if I was, imagine if I was a developer being handed off this file, it'd be a nightmare to work with. So that speaks to the maturity. And then in terms of like hiring, I think you have to be aware of their, how, whether first you have to determine, what your needs are. If they're specific, maybe a freelancer would do. If they're large, where you need a lot of services in terms of design, it may not be just one person. Are you looking to move fast? So depending on your stage of the company, a freelancer might be best. And at another stage, a design agency might be best. How do you pick a design agency? What's the best design agency? Well, when people ask for that, say stuff like that, it's like, well, there's no best because it's highly contextual, right? I think there's domain expertise is very important. For example, like Impekable works a lot with kind of enterprise B2B. We've had clients in networking and wireless. So we know kind of that domain very well. We created dashboards around that, SaaS products around that. In terms of like, if a design agency is focused on consumer applications, like apps similar to Instagram or dating apps, but you have a very enterprise B2B product, they might not be the best for you, even though they've won some design awards, but they lack some of the context. For example, that same trading app company, he said that he had a hard time recruiting because a lot of people don't have options trading experience, right? And they don't know about options, so they lack the context, the domain expertise. So they might be a great designer, but having to explain options, or like, this is not the way options work. You have to rework it. It ends up being more work, right? So you want somebody or a group who has domain expertise as well. So that's another one.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, like us, but even us ourselves, right? Like we work with B2B SaaS companies, but if they're targeting, enterprise, longer sales cycles, type of business model, where we're probably less familiar, and so even within spaces, subcategories that people are probably better at. Do you have like a specific creative process when working or tackling a new design project, or is every project like a blank canvas? You're like, okay, I've got this space. Okay, this is a house. Like I have this much square meters. and like we're gonna just design it based off what they tell us, or do you have like a process you follow that's proven from competition or other, let's say enterprise clients? So, okay, this is working, it's converting well. Let's kind of follow it every time and kind of because it seems to work.
Yeah, well, I think the process, the creative process, essentially is the design process, and it starts by understanding the needs, the goals, right? Understanding the problem. So a lot of it is having an initial, in the beginning, it's having an initial assessment, right? So talking to stakeholders, the business, what is their objective? What is the constraints of engineering? Are you using are you stuck in an old framework that we have to be aware of? For the users, what is their pain point? What is the job to be done? What are they hiring this piece of software to do? And then, if it's an existing product, what is the data telling you? Like, hey, we think we have this problem, but is that jiving with the data? Some other steps include like researching, understanding the competitors and where you stand with the competition, right? Are you on par? Where are you trying to differentiate? Where are they doing better in terms of UX, and where are you failing? We also look at other apps in other industries or in adjacent industries because, maybe there's creative. I think creativity is kind of when you intersect that, right? Like sometimes an industry is so old and all the people in it, they don't think outside that industry, right? And there's a great example of this, maybe like from a physical UX design, is the Mac MagSafe.
Yes.
Which is the magnet. If you look prior to MagSafe, all the laptops and computers, had a plug where if you trip the wire, you probably drag your laptop off the desk and lost $3,000. With MagSafe, you kick it and the magnet just fills up. And that actually came from, the origin of that is the Japanese rice cooker, because if you tripped over that wire, you potentially be harming, bringing down a really hot rice cooker and boiling rice on you. So the MagSafe was really helping you from harm, but that innovation came from a different industry. So like, to that story is looking at other industries, how are they solving similar problems? Can you apply some of their learnings and some of their innovations to your industry? And then a good process involves testing the ideas, in martial arts. So you'll like this analogy is like, if your idea is never tested, it's like having a fighter that you coach, but you never actually test them in a fight, right? You train them, you put them through sparring, you have them do weights, stretch, punch the bag, but you never test that idea in the real world. Then it's that fighter won't stand a chance. Same with the idea. So having a couple of ideas, right? It's like having a couple fighters and then test them out and see which one performs better, and then you go with that fighter. So that's kind of one way to think of it.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way. And then when it comes to the word, creativity definition, I guess everybody kind of has a different way of thinking about it. There's how do you define it, and what do you define as a creative idea or design? Is it pulling it from different industries that people don't think about? I mean, things like Apple are kind of known to be creative or leaders in that space.
Yeah. Well, we're not trying to be creative for creativity's sake here. I think a lot of our work is really solving a problem. Yeah. Right? Does this solve a problem? Does this accomplish the goal? If it happens to be creative, I think bonus points to you. I think creative ideas, they don't necessarily happen in a vacuum. They need sparks or inspiration, kind of similar to that Japanese rice cooker story, right? Like that did not come from the same industry. That could not have come because everything before that in the consumer electronics, computer electronics industry was not innovative. So it couldn't have come from there. So being able to look outside kind of your box, get out of the building is a saying, right? Looking at intersections, looking at different domains. So that does require a little bit of, it's not just going to come to you, right? You're going to have to be kind of well-read in other areas, right? So kind of, and how I try to be creative is to listen to podcasts like yours and listen and also not just SaaS podcasts. Because if all you do is listen to SaaS podcasts, then you do it like every other SaaS entrepreneur, right? So you might want to augment your knowledge with a totally different industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I like to break it out, right? A little bit of Tim Ferriss, a little bit of SaaS, a little bit of, health and fitness to keep it fresh, right? A quick note from our sponsors today, and we'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by Contentify.co, a premium podcast editing and repurposing agency for busy content creators just like you. Are you spending too much time editing your podcast and end up with no time to stay on top of also publishing, sharing, reaching new listeners, while also staying ahead of the latest podcasting trends? Don't worry, Contentify has you covered. You no longer need to worry about spending hours editing and repurposing anymore. Just record your content and they handle the rest. Contentify is an end-to-end podcast editing and repurposing agency to help you grow your podcast by editing and repurposing quickly, easily, and reliably to share all over your social networks. And if you haven't even noticed, I also use them for the SaaS District podcast. So join other busy content creators just like you and me and start saving time and money while you grow your podcast show. Visit Contentify.co to learn more today. So Pek, kind of last question here before we get into the personal rapid fire questions, which you're probably familiar with. Just for people listening in who want to maybe learn more about UX, better design, what are some resources you could recommend for SaaS leaders if they want to learn more?
Yeah, here's a couple, and which we'll link in the show notes. Don't Make Me Think is a really good primer by a wonderful designer, Steve Krug. A good primer on UX called Don't Make Me Think. Since we're talking about SaaS, product-led onboarding is another good book. If you want to learn about another good topic to learn about is design sprints. So there's a book called Sprint by Jake Knapp. And this was something that was implemented in Google Ventures. And Google actually runs design sprints. Another good book is called The Mom Test. And it's a really good guide on how to ask questions, get feedback on your product, because a lot of times entrepreneurs, I would say, they lead with their product, not the problem, right? They lead with the solution. Here's my solution. Do you like it or not? Versus, hey, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And then see if your solution fits their problem. So the mom test is a great way of kind of asking questions that way to avoid any bias. Because if you already show them the product, they can't help but be biased.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're steering them towards solving it a certain way. Other sites include lawsofux.com, so some design principles. There's a site called designsystemsrepo.com where you can see a collection of some of the best design resources, including some of the ones that we've actually worked on ourselves, such as the Google Material Design, Apple interface ones for the Adobe XD systems. uxchecklist.github.io. So it's in a SaaS product, there's a lot of features, and within each, feature or page, they give you a checklist of, like for the login page, right? Like, is there a forget your password, reset your password, or sign up link? It's great. Like, it's, you don't have to, it's a great guideline so that you don't forget certain features. Yeah. And then finally, if you want to learn more about design, I have my own design podcast called What is UX?
What is UX? Okay, awesome. We'll add that is to our show notes as well. You guys check it out if you want to learn more. Yeah. So Pek, you're familiar. You obviously listen to the podcast. The rapid fire questions, personal questions. And by the way, I'd love to hear any suggestions. If you want to, if you have any suggestions on what we can change or improve on these type of questions, I'd be happy to hear from you. So send it over afterwards. But what was your vision when you first started Impekable, and how has it evolved over time to what it is today?
Yeah. So when we were started, obviously we were small. When I started the agency, I started as a solo freelancer. And of course, some of the clients we could serve when you're small is mostly startups. So we started out serving startups. Some notable ones include Firebase, which was acquired by Google. We were doing early design work for Firebase. Attorney Fee, which is acquired by LegalZoom. It's a lawyer marketplace. Zingbox, which is now acquired by Palo Alto Networks, a startup in IoT. And then as we've grown and matured, we've learned, we became bigger, so we were able to serve the enterprise more because they needed more resources. And we also learned how to work with enterprises because they have a lot of different needs, a lot more bureaucracy, a lot more kind of maybe people skills to navigate. And you're usually not dealing with one stakeholder. With a startup, oftentimes you're dealing directly with the CEO, the decision maker. With enterprise, there's usually a committee or a party or multiple stakeholders. So we kind of learn how to navigate the enterprise, and we also learn how to work with funded startups. So nowadays, the vision is serving kind of in one area. For example, like we serve the industrial enterprises, so companies like Pentair, which is like in the industrial aquatics. We help with their mobile and their digital transformation, and then in the tech, high tech enterprises, who value and they can leverage good user experience across lots of users, millions of users. So that's like a high leverage activity, right? Like if I can improve sign up, if I improve the product by a little bit, and I have millions of users, that means a lot. So we work with companies like Adobe, Twilio, Google. A lot of automotive companies, electronic companies, and then startups, usually like a large Series A or Series B or beyond. Maybe they're thinking of their second product. Maybe they're thinking of now they can invest in UX because they have their funding. We can help them with that.
Nice. What's one piece of advice you wish you had known and would tell, let's say, your 25-year-old self?
I would say, in sales, I would say there's hunting versus farming, right? And I would say I leaned too much or for too long on hunting and not as much or not at all on farming. So planting trees, doing stuff like you're doing right now, highly leveraged activities, right? Like doing the podcast. It's not a one-to-one activity, right? Like you're not out talking to one person at a time. You're with any episode, I don't know, I imagine lots of people listen to it. So that's like high leverage time. So taking more time, if I could do something over, like it would be great. For example, had I started the design podcast the moment I started my design agency, then I would have had 10 years of episodes and 10 years of design thought leadership content for people to find us. But we're starting now, right? Like what's the saying? The second best time is now.
Exactly.
Like Paul Graham, the YC, he says, do things that don't scale. And I think I took that advice for too long. But he also didn't say, don't do things that scale, right? So you should also do that. And I think I didn't kind of read between the lines. So also work on things that scale.
Yeah. That's really good advice. And think of the long-term investment game versus just the one-on-one quick transactions. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest challenges you're currently facing in order to continue to grow Impekable? Meaning, what keeps you up at night these days?
Well, I think scaling, right? The actual growth. We've always erred on the side of like growing more slowly because we want to maintain quality. So it's hard to grow fast and still kind of, especially in services, right? So the more people you bring on, you have to ensure a consistent user experience. In a way, I feel like our company is less similar to a SaaS and more similar to like a high-end white glove service, like a Marriott or hotel, right? Like we, at the end of the day, we're a service agency and we're not the cheapest kid on the block, but our services are pretty, what we want to do is create a unique experience and a consistent experience. So I know we have good results, but if we were to just quickly double in size, I'm not sure that kind of like the new people, how do I ensure that the new people are outputting at that level of quality, or not even just, they might be, have high quality, but, people are just like people come to Starbucks or go to the Ritz-Carlton, like they want a certain experience. So we want to make sure that everybody has an impeccable experience. I think maybe one piece of feedback that I took to heart one time was like, it's like, hey, you guys do great work, but I worked with you on 3 projects and they were all ran differently. This was a couple of years ago, right? And I was like, oh man, that's not good, right? It's like, then it's like, it could potentially be highly variable. So again, so then we kind of went back to the drawing board and, and this applies to SaaS as well, right? Like if you have different salesperson, your account manager, your experience could vary. So how do you ensure a consistent experience among everyone?
It's tough. SOPs. It's all about the process, right?
Yep.
And just,
exactly.
Yeah,
so we have SOPs. We have SOPs for everything now these days.
Nice. Yeah, it's fun times. Who or what are some of the best resources? I know you mentioned some, specifically for design, but maybe books or people or mentors or people you follow in the space who you'd say have been, more instrumental to your success over these last few years.
My biggest resources, I recommend Audible and Scribed. Scribed is sort of like a Netflix of books, right? You pay a subscription, you can read many books. So over there, I read a lot of biographies on entrepreneurs. I read design books. I read sales books. So I'm a big consumer, and I also prefer the audio format. I think podcasts are a big educational component for me. I'll plug SaaS District. If you're listening to this, keep listening to this. For me, I also enjoy Indie Hackers. My First Million is a good podcast. Acquired is another one. Masters of Scale is a good one. Noah Kagan. And then Technori, which is another tech podcast, which is a Chicago-based tech podcast. And then on the design, there's a great one that's been around for a long time called User Defenders. And then I'll plug my own, What is UX, where we interview design leaders from companies. You'll get to learn from designers from like YouTube or Netflix or Tesla or even Workday, B2B or Teladoc. So we talk to designers from a lot of different industries so that you kind of get a sense of what it's like in healthcare, in video, in SaaS, so like just different aspects.
Awesome. We'll add all those for people to check out. What does success mean to you today, Pek? I'm assuming it's probably changed over time. How do you define it?
Well, success on one level is like a never-ending pursuit of excellence, right? You can always learn to improve and grow. So success is being able to even have that journey, right? I think with kind of thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? When you are first starting out, you may not have the resources to be survival. Might just be kind of like, I just need to get to survival. One measure of success is like, now I make enough to provide for the team and be able to grow sustainably. Not even just being, not that I can't quite afford like huge impulse, I can't buy a plane or anything, but I think, just being able to go to a restaurant and not have to worry that, can I afford this, right? Is one level of success. And then I'm grateful that in a way this is success as well, right? I have a 10-year-old agency. A lot of small businesses don't make it. What's the statistic, right? For small business, it's pretty abysmal. But it's like 20% of businesses don't make it past 5 years. So the fact that we've been 10 years, it's able to run itself. So I recently, I've kind of transitioned from stepping out of the day-to-day role of running the company. So I'm fortunate that most of the pieces are there and we're constantly refining in that engine now.
Nice.
And then another angle of success is being able to live a life. So I used to focus a lot on career and work. But now I think, having worked in industry for over 10 years and then started a company over 10 years, I try to strive for a better balance to as I get older, to appreciate life, spend more time with friends and family, my professional connections like you. And maybe in the early days, you do have to focus a little bit and lean towards work. But I think overall now I try to have, now that some of that is taken care of, I try to have more of a balance.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's important, right? I mean, at the beginning, you have to pay your bills. You have to, put food on the table and make sure everybody's kind of taken care of. And after that, it's, serving taking care of yourself and your, focusing on other stuff with life. So it seems like you're on the right track. You've done well, and, congrats to you, and hope you continued success with Impekable. Cool. I mean, I guess where can founders listening in who want to listen, maybe get in touch with you, learn more about you? Where's the best place to say hi?
I am pretty active on LinkedIn. So I like LinkedIn as a professional tool. My podcast, if you want to learn more, what is UX, it's on Apple, Google, as well as Spotify. And then the website Impekable, if you want to, Impekable with a K, .com, if you want to learn more about our services. And then you can always reach me at pek@impekable.com that way too. Awesome.
We'll add all those in the show notes as well. So thank you so much again, Pek. Really nice chatting with you again and catching up. Appreciate it.
Likewise, I always enjoy our conversations, and thank you for for having me on the show. Like I said, I've been listening to this for years, so it's like, oh wow, this is really cool. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you all for watching this episode and joining SaaS District today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for future episodes where we interview top leaders in the SaaS industry. If you're a SaaS company looking to grow and unlock the true value of your business, get in touch with us at Horizon Capital, and myself or one of our consultants will provide a free assessment to help you get there and hit your goals. If you have any feedback or suggestions for this podcast, please comment down below and help us improve our content for you all. Thanks again, and see you on the next one.